I believe that the experiences in my life have prepared me for the work that I'm doing today. I think back on the role models that my parents were. My mom and dad mentored juvenile offenders, and when they were older, they mentored teenagers. I worked for 30 years supervising men, women, and juveniles, and I learned a lot of lessons. I learned that you simply can't lock people up and open the gates 2 years, 10 years, or 30 years later and expect that restored citizens walk out that front gate. I learned that people come to prison, with many of them with lives ravaged by addiction and violence. I learned that it's important while people are in prison to provide programming to prepare them for release. That's why you see programs like substance abuse program, mental health services, educational services, and vocational training. You see work programming. You see programs that will deal with criminal thinking and religious services programming. The other thing that I learned is that on the day of the release, men will walk down this hall, go through 2 sets of crash gates to freedom. In many cases, there are family and friends waiting for them, but in many cases, there's no one waiting for them. On a day that should be filled with joy and happiness, a day of freedom and independence, is many times filled with fear and anxiety for an uncertain future. The focus today is to talk about the community and the community's role in reentry. When the prison gates open and volunteers and people from the community are embraced and welcomed, transformation happens. When the community comes in and healthy lives connect with broken lives, healing happens. When the community comes in and there are people that accept people unconditionally and do not judge people, that there's restoration. There's a ministry called Kairos Prison Ministry, and in a year's time, more than 100 volunteers will come in. And they're simply trained to listen, love, love. So as more and more people from the community come in, lives get healthier, the environment gets healthier, and there is a shift. There's a shift in perspective among offenders, a shift from criminal thinking and behavior to pro-social thinking and behavior. So after 30 years, it was time to retire. And I thought I just might take it easy for a while. I had been on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 25 of that 30 years. And that thought didn't last too long because I had an opportunity to go work for a nonprofit organization called Kindway. Kindway is a subsidiary of Reynoldsburg United Methodist Church. And there were a number of people, both men and women at that church, that had served in prisons for many years. They, along with their pastor, had a heart for working with people returning from prison to the community, and they wanted to do something about it. So a design team was assembled, and around the table sat ex-offenders next to retired prison wardens with volunteers and corrections professionals, and we designed a reentry program. We wanted to design something that would prepare men and women for return. So we looked at what that might look like. We thought it'd be very important to start 1 year in while people were still inside and continue 1 year post-release. We looked for best practice curriculum, and we found an evidence-based curriculum called Getting It Right from the Change Companies that dealt with all kinds of issues preparing people for release, healthy relationships, how to make a good reentry plan, relapse prevention, and many others. We also decided to do a program called Celebrate Recovery. Celebrate Recovery is a Christian 12-step program, and there are more than 1,000 Celebrate Recovery communities outside in the community. We decided that mentoring needed to be an important part of our work. So we designed a mentoring program that, again, started inside and continued 1 year post-release. And then we went about the business of recruiting. We recruited 50 volunteers to deliver these programs at the Marion Correctional Institution and at the Ohio Reformatory for Women. And part of our volunteer base included men and women inside that helped co-facilitate the program. So after all those people were trained, the program's name is Embark, and what we decided to do in Embark is our job is to accompany men and women on their journey from incarceration to independence. a community bridge, if you will, a bridge from inside to outside. You might wonder why anybody should care about that. You should care because it costs a lot of money to incarcerate one person for 1 year. It costs about $25,000 in our state, and really that's very close to the national average. It also, 31% of people that are leaving our institutions come back in 3 years. The national average for that is 43%. You should care because that generates more victims, and it generates unintended victims. And those would be family members of victims as well as family members of offenders, particularly children. And what's particularly important to note is that there's something that the community can do about that. So we have completed cycle 1, and we are assisting men and women transitioning out to the community. 2 weeks ago, we started cycle 2. And today, I have hope. I have a lot of hope. I have a hope that lives can change. I have hope that communities can be mobilized. I have hope that this kind of program can be replicated. So in closing, I want to tell you about Tina. A year and a half ago, we interviewed and selected Tina for Embark, and she had reoffended and come back to prison. So in our interview, we asked her what happened, and she said, you know, I did really well for a while, and I had a job, and I was doing very well, but when times got tough, she said, I simply had no one to call. Well, Tina finished the Embark program. 12 days ago, she was released. 4 days ago, she started a job. She has 2 Embark mentors. She is living in supportive housing, and Tina will always have someone to call. Community bridge. It's a concept that's very simple, but the impact enormous. Thank you.